Have you ever wondered why the presence of a confident woman causes certain men to recoil not with admiration, but with fear masked as contempt, or indifference cloaked in criticism? It's not her beauty, it's not her intellect, it's the fire in her spine, the silence in her eyes that speaks volumes, the unshakable awareness that she needs no one to complete her. That kind of presence does not invite weak men, it exposes them. She walks into a room, not looking for validation, but radiating self-possession. Her laughter does not seek approval. Her words are measured, chosen not to appease, but to express. And that, to a man still clinging to his unintegrated ego, is terrifying. Because she is not afraid of solitude. She is not prey. She is not pliable. She does not beg to be seen. She sees herself. The weak man, in his unhealed psyche, operates from a wound. He projects strength, but it is brittle wrapped in bravado, control, and hunger for external power. What he truly fears is inner stillness, the very stillness in which a confident woman lives. She reminds him of everything he has buried, his fear of inadequacy, his unresolved maternal archetypes, his discomfort with emotional intimacy. Her confidence is a mirror, and in it he does not see her, he sees his own lack, his own arrested development, his own fear of not being enough, and so he reacts not with reverence, but with resistance. He will label her too much, intimidating, cold, arrogant, but these are not her truths, they are his projections. Carl Jung wrote that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Yet weak men refuse to look inward. They turn away from the very women who could illuminate the shadows they fear to confront. She, the confident woman, is not flawless, but she is whole. Not because she's never been broken, but because she rebuilt herself brick by bloody brick. Her confidence is not a performance, it is an embodiment. She has met her demons in the dark and did not run. She has mourned the versions of herself that begged, chased, and contorted for love. She has buried them, and in their place stands a woman who no longer asks, "Am I enough?" but instead declares, "I am." This terrifies the weak man who seeks a woman to need him, not to stand beside him as an equal, but to shrink beside him as proof of his dominance. He does not want partnership. He wants dependency. He does not want growth. He wants control. A woman who does not require him to feel whole cannot be controlled, and therefore she must be rejected or broken. But she does not break, because she has done the shadow work. She has faced her own tendencies to diminish herself for love. She has integrated her inner masculine, her boundaries, her discernment, her fierce capacity to protect her own energy. She is not aggressive, but she is not afraid to confront. She is not cruel, but she will not tolerate cowardice dressed as charm. The weak man believes dominance is strength, but true strength is vulnerability. True masculinity is not shaken by the power of a woman, it is elevated by it. Only a man who has faced his own darkness can hold space for her light without trying to dim it. Only a man who has done his own individuation, his separation from societal masks and internal illusions, can meet her without needing to conquer her. To you, the woman watching this, perhaps you have felt the sting of rejection, not because you were lacking, but because you were overflowing. Your energy too honest, your heart too sovereign, your presence too alive. And you wondered if something was wrong with you. You wondered if you should be smaller, quieter, more agreeable. But no empire is built by shrinking. No legacy is born from pleasing. Do not dim your flame to soothe the eyes of those who refuse to grow. The man who cannot stand beside your power is a man still at war with his own. And that is not your war to fight. because your strength is not noise, it is depth. It is the stillness of a mountain, the fury of a storm, the softness of rain. You are the embodiment of contrast, feminine and fire, tenderness and tenacity. That kind of woman cannot be loved by a man who has not yet learned to love himself. A confident woman does not live to be chosen. She is not on display, waiting to be plucked like fruit from a low branch. She is the tree, rooted, growing, unmoved by passing winds or fleeting seasons. Her power does not scream, it resonates. It moves through the air like a current felt, even when unspoken, noticed even in silence, to the man whose masculinity is defined by conquest rather than character. This is disarming. She is not impressed by his status symbols, his empty confidence, polished exterior, or ability to command a room does not penetrate her soul. She listens not to what he says, but to what he doesn't. She watches not just how he moves, but why he moves that way. And in that gaze, he is stripped bare, because when you no longer need the male gaze to survive, you begin to see through it. And she sees. She sees how some men confuse charm for connection, control for security, performance for presence. She sees the fragile ego beneath the surface of grandiosity. She sees the fear disguised as dominance, the pride that is really shame in drag. Her presence alone reveals the truths he cannot hide, not from her, and not from himself. That is the danger she represents. She is not easily seduced because she has seduced her own shadow. She knows what it's like to ache for love and settle for scraps. She remembers the days when she begged for breadcrumbs of attention and called it a feast. But those days are over. She has died 1,000 emotional deaths to arrive here, and now her hunger is not for romance, it is for resonance, depth, substance, alignment. To be near her, a man must rise, not to chase status or power, but to face himself. He must hold his own brokenness without shame. He must know how to sit in silence without fleeing. He must touch the places in himself that once frightened him and not flinch, because she will not carry his weight. She is not here to mother him. She is not here to mend the parts he refuses to meet. Her love is not charity, it is a mirror, and what you see in it is entirely your own reflection. Many will say she is too much, that her standards are unrealistic, her heart guarded, her eyes too sharp. But what they truly mean is, I am not ready for a woman who doesn't need me to feel whole, and that's the point. She is not here to validate your readiness. She is here to stand in her fullness, whether you come or not. And what of the woman still learning this? The one who has been called difficult for saying no, who has been ghosted for speaking her truth, abandoned for asking for more than attention without intention. Understand this, your sensitivity is not a weakness, it is the gateway to your wisdom. Your wounds do not make you unworthy, they make you real. But you must stop explaining your power to those committed to misunderstanding it. The confident woman no longer tries to convince anyone of her worth. She does not chase the emotionally unavailable, the spiritually asleep, or the lazy. She recognizes that love without courage is just comfort in disguise. She does not want to be pacified, she wants to be met, soul to soul, flame to flame. A weak man cannot meet her there, not because he is inherently evil, but because he is still asleep, still dreaming of dominance instead of connection, still afraid that her power means his diminishment. But this is a lie. The sacred union between a strong woman and a strong man does not subtract, multiplies, it expands. but only if both have walked through their fire. Only if both have laid their ego down long enough to feel what's underneath you. The woman awakening to your truth may feel alone on this path, but solitude is not the same as isolation. Solitude is sacred. It is where you become. It is where you remember that your value is not contingent on someone choosing you. It is revealed when you finally choose yourself. And when you do, you become magnetic. Not in the way that lures the wounded, but in the way that summons the healed. So let them be afraid. Let weak men tremble at your presence. Let them call you names, ghost you, question your femininity. That is not your burden. That is their reckoning. You are not born to be palatable. You are born to be powerful, and power, when rooted in integrity, compassion, and truth, is the most seductive force on earth. There is something unmistakable in the energy of a woman who has reclaimed herself. Not in fragments, not in pieces, not in carefully curated performances designed to make her digestible, but in totality. She is unfiltered. She no longer splits herself to be loved in portions. Her love is not tame. It is not meek. It is not ornamental. It is primal, radiant, divine. It does not ask permission to exist. It simply is. This is the essence of the archetypal queen, not in the fairy tale sense of crowns and castles, but in the Jungian sense. The fully individuated feminine, unbowed by rejection, unmoved by flattery, and unshaken by the approval or disapproval of men too afraid to touch their own chaos. She has walked the path of her own underworld. She has met the abandoned inner child, the desperate pleaser, the girl who once measured her worth by how wanted she was. And instead of shunning these shadows, she held them. She mothered herself. She called all parts home. And now, no man can make her feel what she has already. Healed, no ghosting, no betrayal, no breadcrumbing can unseat her, because she no longer anchors her identity in being chosen. She chooses herself, daily, ferociously, lovingly, without apology, and still her heart remains open. Not because she is naive, but because she is wise, because she knows that vulnerability is not weakness. It is sacred rebellion in a world that rewards numbness. She does not armor herself in bitterness, though she has every reason to. She simply sees clearly. She no longer falls for potential dressed in charm. She looks for the man who has faced his own ruins, the man who has done the hard work of rising from them. But these men are rare, because most men are still taught to conquer the world before they ever learn to face themselves. They are encouraged to seek power over others instead of mastery within. They are praised for their ability to dominate, but never for their capacity to sit with pain. They are told strength is silence, when true strength is honesty. And so they arrive at the altar of relationship, ill-equipped, armed with avoidance, ego, and a fear of being seen too deeply. The confident woman cannot be reached through performance. She demands authenticity, not because she is cruel, but because she is tired. Tired of pretending that surface-level connection satisfies her. Tired of pretending that men who cannot hold her heart deserve her body. Tired of being gaslit into believing that her standards are too high when they are, in fact, the bare minimum for sacred union. The weak man, still operating from avoidance, interprets this standard as a threat, not because she is threatening, but because he has not yet built the emotional infrastructure to withstand intimacy without control. He wants the feminine, but only if it bends. He desires her body, but not the responsibility of her soul. He chases her energy, but runs from her truth. He confuses the confident woman for a puzzle he must solve, a mountain he must climb. But she is not a challenge. She is a portal. a gateway into the parts of him he has never dared to touch. And unless he is ready to meet her there, he will retreat. He will accuse her of hardness, of being guarded, of not letting him in. But the truth is, she has already opened the gates. He simply did not have the courage to walk through. This is not arrogance. This is discernment. A woman who has learned her own rhythm does not hand over her emotional sanctuary to someone who will desecrate it. She is not impressed by attention. She is moved by depth, by presence, by consistency. And those who cannot provide it will fall away, not because she pushed them, but because her light exposed their inability to stay. You may feel, woman, that this journey makes you hard to love, that your standards make you unapproachable, that your fire makes you dangerous. But no, you are not hard to love. You are simply hard to manipulate, and that is the very thing that terrifies weak men. Your essence is a litmus test to the unready. You are a storm. To the healed, you are home. There comes a moment in a woman's journey when she no longer yearns to be understood by those who refuse to understand themselves. She stops shrinking her soul to soothe the discomfort of those who've never met their own. She no longer tries to contort her truth into something beautiful for the emotionally blind. She realizes the ache to be accepted by weak men was never a hunger for love, it was a residue of past wounding, of childhood programming, of trauma disguised as longing. The confident woman has burned in that fire. She knows the sting of abandonment, the echoing silence after vulnerability meets withdrawal. She remembers the way her voice trembled when she first dared to ask for more, and how it was met with less. And she grieved for the man, yes, but more so for the part of herself that believed she had to beg for basic respect. That grief became her altar, and on it she laid every version of herself that once said yes when she meant no. Now she speaks in clarity, in boundaries, in sacred self-loyalty, not to keep people out, but to call in only what is real. And that reality is unbearable to the weak man who thrives in fantasy. He wants the illusion of connection without the cost of accountability. He wants the fire without the burn, the softness without the soul, the goddess without the storm. But the storm is the goddess, for she is chaos and cosmos, destruction and rebirth. Her confidence is forged in paradox, feminine surrender laced with sovereign will. She will open, yes, but only in the presence of safety, not comfort, not convenience, safety. That rare and sacred energy a man emits only when he has learned to hold himself in all his truth. And so, the weak man feels the pressure, not from her demands, but from her absence of need. That absence is deafening, because the weak man only knows how to relate through being needed. When a woman says, "I desire you, but I do not need you," he loses his script. His purpose collapses. His illusion of power crumbles. He does not understand that in her strength, she offers him the greatest gift a man can receive, the invitation to become. Not to perform, not to posture, but to become. To rise into a deeper, truer, freer expression of his masculinity. A masculinity rooted in presence, in truth, in devotion, not domination. But becoming requires death. Death of the ego, of the mask, of the boy who still runs from discomfort. And most will resist that death. They will label her the destroyer. They will cast her out like fire, too wild to tame. But the ones ready for rebirth, they will stay. They will sit in the heat of her presence, trembling perhaps, but staying, listening, opening, because in her they see something ancient, something sacred. The reminder that love was never meant to be convenienced, it was always meant to be alchemy. Transformation. She is not here to complete a man. She is here to awaken him, just as he must be ready to awaken her too. This sacred tension, the dance between her radiance and his readiness, this is where truth lives, not in shallow compatibility, not in mutual loneliness, but in the merging of healed polarities, the yin that does not collapse, the yang that does not conquer to you, watching now. Perhaps exhausted from trying to explain your fire to those with wet hands, hear this. Your very existence is a challenge to the status quo. You are not too much. You are a mirror of what has been forgotten, a call back to the wild, the deep, the unapologetically real. Every time you refuse to accept half love, you remind the world what real love is. Every time you walk away from emotional cowardice, you clear space for someone courageous. Enough to stay. So do not water down your essence to be sipped by those unthirsty for truth. Do not betray your inner queen to play the concubine in a weak man's fantasy. You are not a wound to be fixed. You are a force to be reckoned with. When a woman rises into her full confidence, she steps out of the realm of the ordinary. She no longer fits within the roles society carved for her, the obedient daughter, the appeasing lover, the self-sacrificing nurturer who drowns in everyone's needs but her own. She no longer seeks to be nice, for niceness is often the mask of submission, of conditioning, of fear. Instead, she becomes true, and in a world addicted to falsehood, the truth is dangerous. She becomes the embodiment of what Carl Jung described as the integrated animo-feminine energy made conscious, no longer repressed, no longer distorted through the male lens. She no longer exists merely as the projection of men's fantasies. She no longer lives as muse, temptress, or idealized savior. She withdraws her energy from that collective illusion and reclaims it. She becomes the subject of her life, not the object of someone else's. And oh, how the uninitiated man resists that taught to him. The confident woman is an affront. She will not play the game of seduction that ends in sacrifice. She will not decorate herself in emotional availability while asking for nothing. She will not soothe his wounds just because he arrived with them. She is not a bomb for his insecurity. She does not exist to affirm his masculinity by pretending to be lesser. She is not lesser, she is sovereign. She is fire walking in human skin. And the weak man, still clinging to patriarchal scripts and wounded masculine ideals, cannot hold that fire. He seeks control because he lacks mastery. He retreats to critique because he lacks self-awareness. He confuses emotional independence with arrogance, boundaries with hostility, depth with danger. And because he cannot dominate her, he tries to diminish her, but it doesn't work. Because the confident woman is not built on compliments. She is not inflated by male desire. Her worth is not a currency that fluctuates with someone else's interest. She has outgrown the economy of external validation. Her currency is truth, integrity, alignment, and these things cannot be bought or bargained for. The men who mock her strength, avoid her presence, or label her intimidating, they are revealing something, not about her, but about themselves. They are disclosing their own internal fragmentation, their unresolved wounds, their lack of emotional maturity. A confident woman does not make a strong man shrink. She makes him expand. She draws him deeper into himself, not because she demands it, but because her being evokes it. She leads with essence, not effort, and essence is what the weak man has forgotten. He lives in the world of surfaces. He decorates his identity with what he does, what he owns, who he sleeps with. But she does not care for these masks. She is not drawn to facade. She is drawn to soul. She can taste inauthenticity before a word is spoken. She can feel the tremble of a man who fears his own feelings. Her intuition is ancient, and ancient things do not bow to modern lies. Still, many women fear walking this path, the path of becoming, of shedding, of standing alone, because they know the cost. They know that being truly confident is often lonely, that in reclaiming themselves, they will lose those who only loved their compliance, that to walk with a straight spine is to watch the world fall silent before you, but they walk anyway. Because to betray the self for companionship is a death to slow, to cruel, because they know that solitude is not punishment, it is preparation. The empty space they endure is not void. It is sacred ground where the real can finally emerge. It is where they meet themselves so deeply that no imitation of love can ever deceive them again. And this is why the confident woman terrifies weak men, because she cannot be seduced by promises. She requires proof. She cannot be manipulated by guilt. She has grieved too many versions of herself to return to people-pleasing. She is not addicted to fantasy. She is married to truth. She does not chase. She attracts. She does not beg. She invites. She does not collapse. She stands, alone if she must, but never in fear. The man who meets her must come whole, or not at all. In the mythology of human connection, there exists a quiet war between illusion and authenticity. The confident woman is not at war with men, she is at war with illusion. The illusion that love is earned through obedience, that power is gained through silence, that value comes from being desired, not from being aware. She is a threat to the illusion because she has shattered it within herself. She no longer confuses attention for affection, consistency for control, or possession for protection. She sees clearly. She does not demonize men, but she does demand they evolve. And evolution terrifies the weak man, because it requires disintegration. It requires that he no longer use a woman as an emotional surrogate, that he no longer project his unhealed mother wound onto her softness, that he no longer use her femininity to soothe the ache of his own. Emotional illiteracy, for a confident woman will not mother a man in the place of the mother he never faced. She will not be his emotional therapist, his ego bomb, his safe house, when he has never built one within. She will not entertain his fear of feeling by making herself small, manageable, or mute. And so he calls her cold, when in truth she is simply not codependent. He calls her distant, when in truth she simply has boundaries. He calls her controlling, when in truth she refuses to be controlled. To love a woman like this is to enter the temple of initiation. You do not walk in with muddy feet and call yourself ready. You strip, you kneel, you listen. You humble the noise of your conquest and awaken the silence of your presence. You leave behind the performative masculinity you were taught and become real, because she will see through the rest, and it will not last. She may be sensual, but she is not seduced by the ordinary. She may be open, but she is not available to the unready. Her energy is not casual, it is sacred. To be loved by her is not a stroke to the ego. It is a summons to the soul. And yet, this summons is not violent. It is not loud. It does not scream. It whispers. It invites. It seduces only those with ears tuned to truth, hearts that beat in rhythm with authenticity. It weeds out the shallow not with malice, but with precision. She is no longer available for emotional children in grown men's bodies. She has done too much work to carry anyone who refuses to carry themselves. She is not the playground for wounded masculinity. She is the crucible. She does not flirt with potential. She communes with power, and power, in her world, is not force-it, is self-ownership. The man who says I want her must also be willing to say, I'm willing to meet myself, for the two are inseparable. The woman who has faced her own shadow becomes a mirror for others to do the same. She no longer tiptoes around the discomfort of men who have avoided their pain for years. She no longer sugarcoats truth to protect egos that have never known responsibility. She no longer filters her love to be easy, digestible, or convenient. Her love is not convenience. Her love is clarity. And in that clarity, many men falter. Not because she pushes them, but because they have never stood still long enough to see themselves. In her presence, they must. Her love is not a hiding place, it is a light. It shines into the dark places most would rather keep locked. But for the man who is ready, this is salvation. It is the beginning of everything real. And so, she waits not with desperation, but with quiet power. She lives fully. She thrives in her art, her purpose, her pleasure. She dances with the moon and listens to the wisdom of silence. She cultivates herself, knowing that the man who is worthy of her will not need to be chased. He will recognize her not by sight, but by soul memory, the knowing that comes from beyond logic. The meeting of two beings who have died and been reborn in their own fire. To the woman watching now, standing at the edge of her own becoming, do not flinch. Do not turn back. Yes, it is lonely here. Yes, it is quieter, but it is clear. And clarity will always cost you comfort. But what you gain is everything. There is a final stillness that arrives in the journey of the confident woman, not the silence of absence, but the peace of arrival. She is no longer waiting, not for validation, not for understanding, not for a man to finally recognize what she has always carried. Her power no longer seeks acknowledgement. It simply exists. It breathes. It walks with her in every step. And where once there was ache, now there is awareness. This is the moment when she becomes untouchable, not because she has hardened, but because she has healed. Because her center is no longer external. The storm may rage around her, but she no longer chases shelter. She is the shelter. Gone is the anxiety of not being chosen. Gone is the hunger for romantic redemption. In its place, discernment. A woman who no longer fears solitude is a woman the world cannot control. She does not need to prove her worth with performance or prettiness or politeness. She does not barter her boundaries for temporary attention. She does not confuse longing for love. She no longer participates in the economy of insecurity. The weak man senses this, and he panics, because she no longer needs him to feel powerful. She has found her power in her own bones, in her choices, in the way she wakes each morning and does not apologize for being whole. He cannot earn access through charm or pity or promises. His money, his muscles, his masks, none of it moves her unless it is matched with presence, with depth, with truth. She does not hate him. She simply no longer makes excuses for him, no longer decorates red flags with potential, no longer assigns spiritual significance to emotional unavailability. She sees the difference now between connection and chemistry, between drama and devotion, between ego chasing and soul growing. And she is done chasing. She chooses, and in that choice is the final alchemy, because she no longer fears being too much. She no longer shrinks her voice to avoid unsettling fragile egos. She no longer second-guesses her intuition to appear agreeable. She has spent too many nights breaking apart for those who couldn't even offer presence. She has cried her last tears for the unavailable. Now, she saves her softness for those who can hold it, her fire for those who won't extinguish it. She has become unshakable. The confident woman no longer confuses love with effort. She no longer sees struggle as proof of value. She no longer pours into cups with holes and calls it devotion. Her time, her energy, her body, her heart, they are sacred, and they are offered only to those who have earned access, not by games, but by showing up as whole men. Men who have wept, who have shattered, who have questioned everything they were taught about masculinity and rebuilt it from truth. Men who are not afraid to be seen in their weakness because they have redefined strength. Men who do not run when she speaks her needs, but rise to meet them. Men who are not intimidated by her fullness, but honored by it. The weak man, in contrast, becomes a ghost before ever fully arriving. He fades in the face of her clarity. He disappears when confronted with her honesty. He sees the mirror she holds up and cannot bear to look. But his leaving is not her loss. It is her liberation, because now she knows she was never too much. He was just never enough. She walks forward now with nothing to prove. She walks in rhythm with her own truth. And those who are meant for her will not shrink from that rhythm. They will dance in it. To all the women listening, you were not born to bend. You were born to become. Your softness is not a weakness. Your fire is not a flaw. The world will try to convince you otherwise. Let it, then show it who you are. And to the men ready to meet her, shed the armor. Drop the script. Step into your own depth. For she does not want perfection. She wants presence. And if you can offer that, you will not merely witness her power, you will be transformed by it. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.